Hello, and welcome to another edition of Who's the Savage Now? Who's the Savage Now? Good question. I'm MC, your host, for this latest edition of my YouTube channel, Who's the Savage Now? Covering everything from handcrafted animal rights advocacy to local pedestrian safety and everything in between. Vegan cuisine, music, handcrafted music, we got it right here. We got it. To, what else do we do? On air, we cover on-air malfeasance at our local public radio stations. Yes, we do. And we bring it all live and direct from the poor man's beachfront condo here on the edge of a continent, right on the edge, in an previously undisclosed seaside city, not far from the megapolis known as Los Angeles, California. Exhibit A for humanity gone wrong, indeed. So sit back, relax, walk the dog, feed the cat, and get ready for some hard-hitting commentary from yours truly, MZ. Thanks for being a part of the show. We appreciate it. Stay tuned for more. Greetings, everybody. This is MZ with you here on a Sunday morning. Partly cloudy, partly sunny Sunday morning. The Jerry Quickly saga continues for just one more episode, briefly. Thursday on KPFK, there was a show called Conversations with the Listener, or Conversation with the Listeners. I'm not sure which word had the S on it, but it led me to believe they were going to be talking to listeners, which they did at the very end for about 7.5 minutes. But the rest of the show was a lot of pledge driving, a lot of introductions, a lot of, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of politicking, promises, a lot of promises made about how great it's going to be over the rainbow, someday over the rainbow. And surprisingly, a failure to commit to the next Conversations with the Listener by the general manager, Anyel Fields, who pushed it off into March, maybe April, maybe never, someday over the rainbow.
It looks like we got Andrew from the Inland Empire. He has a question for us. Andrew, welcome to KPFK.
Yeah, thank you. Greetings, all.
Thanks.
I'm a very long time supporter, listener of the station.
Thank you.
And I'll continue supporting it. It's so vital to our community and the world. And I appreciate the management and others coming on the air to communicate with the listeners. I think this is the best way to keep the station strong, communication, and this is a great way to do it. We've had regular reports to the listener, usually on a monthly basis. So I'd like to see if that can be revived, if it's not already, and when will be the next report to the listener so we can continue these great discussions.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. I've been asked that question a number of times during I'm on the cusp of having my 1 year mark so far, but I really wanted to spend time to gain an understanding of the station, its ins and outs, so I can answer those critical questions and actually have develop a view and a vision for the station as well. We will be engaging with you, the listener, and sorry I didn't directly answer your question about when's the next one. I don't know yet. This may be something we do quarterly.
A whole lot of He should have had that nailed down, man, for us. And that leads me to this criticism, constructive criticism. Again, let me just say, before I go any further, I've never worked at a radio station, and I have no idea what goes on behind the microphone, the hard work that it takes to keep a radio station running in today's economy, particularly in the age of the internet, when everyone is just listening to podcasts and downloading, streaming, and this and that. No one's listening to radio anymore. It's a dinosaur waiting for the asteroid, except for listeners like me, over the age of 40. And who came up listening to radio. So we're clinging to our little transistor radio stations. That being said, I do have some constructive criticism. I'd like these criticisms to be taken in the constructive mode of helping to build a better radio station. Which leads me to my next criticism, that there was no notice of this. If I hadn't called the station and had a personal conversation with the program director, Kevin Fleming, I wouldn't have known about Thursday at 7 either, Conversations with the Listener. I'm a regular listener to KPFK mornings and afternoons and other odd times. I didn't hear one promo for that show. What's up with that? You say you care about the listener. You say the listener. Well, without the listener, you really don't have a station. So I think the listener's the most important part of this equation. Yeah, they did out of the 60-minute show, Conversations with the Listeners, last Thursday, the Anyel Fields, the general manager, Kevin Fleming, the program director, and the executive director, the new executive director of Pacifica was there, Mack C. Jackson. And it was a conversation with themselves, mostly. And then a lot of pledge driving in between that, up to about 40 minutes of pledge driving and introductions and conversations amongst upper management. And then the last 20 minutes, they started to take calls, and they got about 5 calls, one of which was mine at the very end. I squeezed it in. They squeezed me in. And let's see what it sounds like.
And how we're going to best utilize our programming to serve the community. I know we're getting to the end of our hour. We can take a couple more calls. Let's go with Barbara in LA.
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. In this rush to get new programming, I hope you keep some of the older programs. And my favorite program is Something Happening with Roy Tuckman from midnight to 6 a.m.
Now, Barbara makes an important point right here. Roy Tuckman, Roy of Hollywood, in his show Something's Happening, which airs Monday through Thursday, midnight to 5:30 a.m., I believe. That's how I got introduced. That's how I got into KPFK 17 and a half years ago. I used to work at a movie theater and get home at 2 a.m. And I turn on the radio, and there was Roy playing all just the widest variety of shows you could think of: spirituality, health, news, alternative information. I mean, just a cornucopia of stuff. And that's how I got into the show, and that's how over the years I've heard a lot of people say the exact same thing. Roy of Hollywood, who plays a lot of Alan Watts. In fact, it was Roy Tuckman that's partly responsible for why we have all the recordings of Alan Watts that we do. When they sent them down from KPFA, I remember him telling a story about how somebody was going to use the reels that Alan Watts was on to record over and do another show or something like that. And Roy said no, or Roy grabbed them and didn't let them go into the recycle bin and saved them for the station. I remember Roy telling a story something like that. And Roy is a fixture at the station. In fact, Anyel says during this show that Roy's been there since the beginning, 60 years. And so anyway, and he also said another thing. He said that over the 60-year history of the KPFK station, they've had 36 general managers. 36. That's one every year and a half. I think, if my math is right. Unbelievable, right? They talk about this a little bit. And also the position of the executive director has been the position of the executive director has also been a revolving door. So, excuse me, based on that math, Anyel Fields has been there 1 year. He's not going to last another 12 months. Based on the history of the station, he's not going to be there for another year. He's going to be out the door based on, if you go by the station history. Let's listen to them talk about it.
There's a whole spectrum of things that need to be addressed. The executive director, I'm not afraid to say it, position has been a revolving door. There's been a whole number, and you probably give that fact better than me.
Yeah, same as general manager. As Roy Tuckman says, he's been here since the station started, and the station's been here for 60 years, and I'm the 36th general manager.
Yeah, and
it's amazing that he keeps that total right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bottom line is, that number is pretty intimidating when you hear things like that.
It sure is pretty intimidating. Let's get back to Barbara.
Statements mailed to the KPFK voters during the
Okay.
Local station board election.
Thank you, Barbara. Renee, you want to go ahead and answer that one about the ballots?
Yes, there are going to be printed statements mailed along with the ballots. So if you need if you are getting a paper ballot, it's going to be accompanied by the candidate statements, which are also online at elections.pacifica.org.
Thank you, Renee.
Let me just remind the listeners that there is an election going on currently. All that stuff is just a bit above my head. I've never been able to get into wrap my head around what goes on there in terms of elections and the local LSB, the local election board, and local station board. Come on, Michael, get it together. Hey, we're learning together here, right? Local station board, LSB. There's an election for your local station board. I don't know how many members are on it. That would be a good thing for me to call the station and get an interview with one of these guys about, or with the election supervisor. What was her name? Renee. That would be a great. That would be dynamic radio.
Michael, you got something to say about Trump? Let's keep it brief because we're coming to the end of this.
Here I come. Some of you are asking, did you call in? Hell yeah, I called in.
Hour.
Yeah, guys, thanks for the show. I hope this isn't the last one that you guys do. Very informative. And Kevin, thanks for talking with me the other day about Jerry. I appreciate that. Although I still feel that you should put out something from the station officially, letting people know, so people aren't left to wonder and rumor and gossip monger.
Before you finish that, Michael, let us make sure that you understand one thing about that, and Yale mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, his contract, there was a contract.
I got it.
Okay, so we understand.
I got that point. Enough said. My main concern now is like the amount of Trump coverage that's on KPFK, particularly in regards to the KPFK mission statement, challenging corporate media perspectives. A lot of it, Ian Masters, Tom Hartman, John Wiener, his show Trump Watch. It's borderline what I hear on mainstream media. And to sum it all up in one quick question, and then I'll listen off air. Why do we get 60 minutes of Trump Watch with John Wiener and only 30 minutes of anti-war radio with Scott Horton on Sunday mornings?
Thank you very much, Michael, for your comments and your question, and we appreciate you listening to the station and bringing this your concerns to the airwaves.
Take that, KPFK. But last Friday they played an interesting show called The Contrarian with Tony Bates. And he brought up a real interesting question. Let's listen to a little bit of that. Something about black progressives versus white progressives. They're not the same. They don't think the same. They don't like the same shows. Let's listen to a little bit of that.
To our new executive director, Mack C, who said something so important that we're going to have to break down in our meeting yesterday, that we're going to have to break down on these airwaves over time, and that is that black progressive is different from white progressive, and that's why this conversation is so important. We've got to have it. Let's have it on these airwaves at KPFK 90.7 because it's the only place we can do it.
So that was Tony Bates last Friday. His show, The Contrarian. I've never heard of Tony Bates. This is the first time I've heard him on KPFK. He gave a little bio of himself there on his show, and he's got a show called The Contrarian because he says Democrats and Republicans both pull their hair out when they hear him. What about progressives? What do they do? Anyway, that was a little clip from another show. I'm off topic here. Let's get back to the conversation with the listener and quote unquote conversation with the listener. There's a couple more callers I want to play. There were 6 calls altogether at the end of the show. 6 calls out of 60 minutes. 60-minute show. They took 6 calls, one of which was mine. I played that already, I think. There were 2 calls concerned about Spanish language programming. I'll play one of those. And there was another guy, long-time listener, talked about how Roy Tuckman brought him into the station and suggested something about programming, weekly and monthly programming instead of daily programming. But they shot that down. They explained to him that that doesn't attract listeners. Blah blah blah. Let's see what see if I can find that. Here he is. This was Sasha.
I just wanted to chime in. I've been a listener, supporter for over 31 years. I started listening around 1987, just stumbling upon it, commuting late at night, listening to Roy. I discovered Roy's show. Something's happening, and
Check 1, 2. I just wanted to play that clip to give you an idea. There were 6 callers total for this show. Conversation with the listeners. I was one of them. Let's see. It started with Andrew. There was Sasha, Barbara. Andrew, Sasha, Barbara, and then me, and Ramona, 5, and then there was one other guy. I don't remember his name. Elias, something like that. So Ramona and Elias called in for Spanish language programming, concerns about that. And then Andrew and Sasha were 2 long-time listeners. I mean, decades, man. And Barbara, too. So, wait, was Andrew? Yeah, Andrew, Sasha, and Barbara. These are like decades-long listeners to the station, right? And 2 of them mentioned Roy of Hollywood, who also was my entry into KPFK. Roy of Hollywood, 12 to 5:30, Monday through Thursday programming. So I wanted to play Sasha there, get his mention of Roy Tuckman in there. Just trying to understand KPFK, just trying to get my mind around what's happening there, how far it's fallen from grace. The heyday was, its inception in the 50s, I guess, 60s, the Martin Luther King era. The Pacifica Radio Archives is just one hell of a place. And if you want to get a gift, if you want to donate to the station, get the memory stick with the complete Pacifica Radio Archives on it. It's like, I don't know, like 3 days of listening, or I forget. It was just incredible. A complete Alan Watts lecture series. Anyway, I'm way off topic here. I want to wrap this up. Jerry Quickly was recently let go from the station, and there's a few competing narratives about his departure. I just want to. This is a multiple choice question. What happened to Jerry Quickly? A, B, C, or D? Let me get this clip loaded up. Hang on. I got it. I got the clip. Here's the station's version of what happened to Jerry Quickly.
A lot of folks out there are concerned about this happening with Jerry Quickly. His contract has expired, and we're working with SAG-AFTRA in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement for a final disposition on this matter. Until things are resolved, we can't speak more than that about it until it comes to a conclusion. But we do love.
One thing we should say about that is to dispel some rumors.
Yeah,
Jerry was not fired.
Yes,
Jerry was not fired on Christmas.
Yeah, there's some of that.
In any organization or any job, you got a job and you're under a contract, and if someone says, well, you know what, we can't move forward with this contract, things change. And there's change happens every day in life.
Yeah.
So we just want people to understand it's not malicious. It's not, there's not a problem. It's not punishment. It's just change, and it's a contractual thing.
Yeah, one of the other things I'm looking forward to having Kevin come aboard is to...
There you go. There you go. That's the station version. Now, let's hear another version.
The insane, mad stuff that Jerry does, and we're going to be working hard to get him back on the air. We just got to, again...
It's an issue of funding. If we successfully fundraise, we'll
get there.
We can do what we need to do.
And we're going to work on that.
So, the station says it's a contractual issue. Jerry and Greg say it's a lack of funding. That was Friday, January 4th. of this year, 2019. Jerry's last show, Greg Palast and investigative apologist extraordinaire Greg Palast coming on to defend Jerry like his big brother, coming to school to talk to the principal because Jerry's been acting up in class. Say, hey, he's a great guy. Come on, man. So the station says it's a contractual thing. Jerry and Greg say it's a funding thing. Let's see what the listeners say.
All right. Thank you, Jerry, for taking my call. So Greg
Yes.
just verified rumors that have been circulating around the community for a couple of weeks now that you were being terminated. And
That's what I heard. That's what I heard from a little bird. Yep, that's what I heard. But interestingly, so we got three competing narratives here. Multiple choice. Take your pick, A, B, or C. It's a contractual thing. It's a funding thing. Jerry was fired. That's three different options, okay? Okay, one is that we disagree over the contract, okay? We can't afford him. We're paying him we're not paying him enough, whatever. The second one was, well, we don't have enough money to keep the show going, okay? And then the third one from the listeners was, well, he just got canned, man. They just canned him. Now, but interestingly, last night, Jerry posted a video, about a minute and a half long video, imploring his listeners to call the station to get back on the air. He can't broadcast unless he has those four letters behind him, KPFK. Dude, you got so many broadcast opportunities. You got SoundCloud, you got YouTube, you got Blog Talk, dude, go do your own thing. Make it happen. Make it rain. Why do you need KPFK so bad? Why are you so hard up on KP? Why are you so married to KPFK? You got canned, dude. You were shown the door, basically. Have some grace. Have some grace about you, Jerry. That's not Jerry's style. Okay, but he made a video last night. This is Jerry within the last 24 hours, and today is January 15th or something. It's Wednesday, January, 15th, is that right? Midweek, and this is Jerry, just in the last 24 hours, explaining what happened.
Let's crack a lack of my peoples. How you doing? I'm Jerry Quickly, and I was told just a few days before Christmas that This Is Happening was going to be canceled and that I was going to be fired as of Friday, January 4th. Well, since then, my union is working with the station to try to restore the show. We have a commitment of an outside underwriting grant from a private foundation that will cover the majority of costs for the show, and as a result, the station has taken a pause to consider this offer. My hope is that they will accept this offer as opposed to pausing and considering the offer. Right now, your voices are critical for the support.
Yeah. Right now, your voices are critical to keep him off of KPFK. Jerry's unfit to be a host of KPFK, in my humble opinion. Imho, he abuses his callers. He incites violence on the air. It's documented at my channel, Who's a Savage Now, colluding with ignorance, inciting violence on KPFK, Jerry Quickly. And that was the last straw. Everything was cool until I made that video about his incitements to violence. 4 specific instances within the last 12 months of Jerry, just me randomly amateur radio hobbyist, just that I could find, okay, of him inciting violence on the air on a historically anti-war peace radio station like KPFK and Pacifica. Jerry goes against the grain of the mission of the network and the station. Okay, if you can't understand that, then you can't understand anything. And people are just so over medicated. This is really fascinating study in cognitive dissonance here. It's very clear to me. I could care less either way. If Jerry is on KPFK or not on KPFK, I advocated him not being there. I'd rather him not be there because I feel that he's not, well, for reasons previously mentioned I've said enough about Jerry. But there you go. Take your pick. And we'll see where the cards fall, where the chips fall. Let them fall where they may. I'm out. I got to get out of here. This is going on too long. I'm going to post this right now. This is MZ coming to you live and direct from a very wet and cold and gloomy poor man's beachfront condo right here on the edge of a continent in a previously undisclosed seaside city not far from the megapolis known as Los Angeles, California. Very cold, very wet, rainy Wednesday afternoon. Peace out.